Well, Rob, welcome back, man.
We are back, and I threw a curveball this week.
With
I mean,
the with some late changes, or what
yeah,
do you
yeah,
mean?
with sent you the blog post buttoned up, ready to go like days in advance, and then an hour before we record, I'm like, I just want to change all of it. So let's.
Yeah, so I'm if 30% of the things that I say don't make sense, or if anybody goes and reads the blog afterward and they're like, yeah, that wasn't in there, well, that's on me. But
Yeah, hey, it's all good.
we'll do as well as we can. Um,
The other thing, the other update I wanted to give is I got a new sweatshirt here, and it's that's important because the number one piece of feedback we got on the like vibe of this podcast is that it looks like I'm in a prison essentially, and like this just totally bland walls. And so I figured what would go better with bland walls than a gray sweatshirt.
yeah. Meanwhile, I bought some skulls that are up here, so we've got some
Yeah.
like Mexican decorations. So I'm trying to carry some of the weight for both of us. But hey, this week we are jumping into some pretty practical stuff around demand. Around today, we're going to talk about the demand audit, which this couldn't come actually at a better time because that is like where I am. I feel like I'm in a spot where I've got some like lukewarm demand. We've signed some contracts. We're moving forward with some stuff, but I'm not what I thought was promising demand has kind of petered out a little bit, and now I've been scratching my head around it. So this is a perfect blog. Everybody, welcome into the problems that I'm experiencing as a founder. Hopefully, for a few of you, maybe if you're wrestling a little bit with lukewarm demand, it'll resonate. But Rob, what's going on? Who's this for? And what was going on that you wrote it?
Yeah, so this is somebody commented on something at some point. I don't remember. I remember you sent me a screenshot of something that was like, "Cool, I get this demand thing. I'm not feeling it. What do I do?"
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Okay, that's interesting. That's basically the common thing, right? Like if you've really found intense demand, you really don't come talk to me except to say, "Hey, cool, thanks for your stuff." Like that's totally how it works, and it's nice. If you haven't found intense demand, then you're kind of in this space where it's like, I feel like I'm pushing. It's not quite working, and I'm not sure what to do. There's a million things it could be. Right, like, and I don't know if it's that I'm just bad at sales. I don't know if it's that, right, like there's no actual demand here. Like, what the heck is happening? And so one of the parts of that sales sprint that we recorded a while ago is this activity where you just analyze your calls and say, what the heck is going on here? And so we're just pulling that piece out and calling it a demand audit because that sounds important.
Yeah, it's kind of like um I'm confused. I don't know what the answer is. You've got a very practical set of steps that founders can go through
Yeah.
in order to like look at their calls, like diagnose. We're going to get into the difference between like a demand problem and an execution problem, which is I find to be a helpful way of bifurcating like actually what is going on here and the medicine that you need to take for both of those is slightly different. There was one other thing that you wrote before we jump into some more of the specifics that jumped out to me. You wrote, if you're not seeing demand in any of your calls, good. Don't waste your life pretending that there's demand where there isn't. It is harder to build a small company around a weak pull than it is to build a big company around strong pull. Um, and this, that really, when I read that, I was just like, wow, that's so right. Like if you've got this force behind you, which is, customer pull, um, it's just like, yeah, it's just like the difficulty of building companies does not scale with the number of customers. It's like more related to, do you have demand that is like pulling your product?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly like, so now it's hard to see this because in Silicon Valley, there's like all this lore about working nonstop. But what you used to be able to see if you went and looked at a fast growing startup and then looked at a not fast growing startup was that the fast growing startups didn't actually work harder. than the not fast growing startups. In fact, the not fast growing startups often were working much harder because they were like, just to get a single deal done, they had to twist arms, they had to kiss babies, they had to do like all this
Yeah.
stuff
Yep.
to get the like one of the fastest growing, I can't say the name, but one of the fastest growing startups I've seen, that's like one of the fastest growing startups in Silicon Valley in the last 10 years, like they were working 9 to 5. Like basically everybody there was working pretty much 9 to 5. They just found really intense demand, built a very tight sales process, and then just repeated a ton. It was like, stuffing lockers basically versus like magically making things happen. And so that's the important, like, you can either just keep pushing relentlessly and just keep twisting arms, or
Hmm.
you can just figure out where there is demand and design around that. And my kind of call to you is to stop pushing where there isn't demand. It just sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why, for me personally, my instinct is to push
Yeah.
where is to like get things across the line and really it's just the wrong thing to be doing. It should be like kind of withdraw from that and take a step back and figure out like where is their pull or what do I need to do in order to find pull. I don't know why I find that personally hard to prioritize, but it's not my instinct as
It's
a
so it's
yeah,
not your instinct because like we just, again, coming back to the physics of sales, right? We just believe that the way that sales works is we have to convince somebody to buy something
yeah.
versus the whole activity is to find somebody who needs no convincing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll get into some confusing examples, but also sometimes you're selling and it starts good or there's something there and you're just incrementally chasing that something. You're like this and it just for me, I feel like I linger on the okay, have I actually found demand piece longer than I need to when it's like it's actually becoming more clear that it's not actually there.
Yeah. The other thing I'll call out about this topic too is that this isn't just for like B2B software or AI startups that are at the idea stage or at their first couple of customers and trying to scale. Like I've literally done this with companies that are 20 million ARR and like consumer companies too. And so this is just like a way to analyze what the heck is going on and is the buyer actually applying force? If so, what do we do about it? If not, what do we do about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And let's before we get into the actual elements of the demand audit, let's maybe do a recap. I think you have a really I never get tired actually of being reminded by like what is good demand and what is like not actually demand because I just continually make mistakes around that. So you write, I'll go through a couple of these and maybe we can pick one or two to talk about, not going too long on it. But you write, what is good evidence of demand? Like what does that look like? One is a customer buys weirdly fast. A customer leans in during a call. You actually write something very interesting here. One potential customer really leans in during a call quotes, wait, you can help me with that? And then you say, even if they eventually lean out and don't buy, like what's going on in that situation?
Yeah, the way I want to contrast these is from last week's episode, right? Like we're looking for evidence that they are applying force. That's it, right? And the best evidence is that they buy really fast, right? That's great evidence, but we might not always have that. Or like another example of that is you do a sales call, they ghost for 6 months or whatever, and then show up and buy in a week. And you're like, where were you? Right? Well, okay, something happened in their world that changed their to-do list such that they started applying force in this way and they bought really fast. And so what we're looking for is just evidence of force in oh, wow, we're actually trying to solve for that right now. We're trying to make that happen. That's on my to-do list right now, right?
Mm,
Those are those things and the like energy that is that you can see, the leaning in, the like, I'm actually trying to do something, is evidence, even if at the end of the call they wind up ghosting you. Because, right, like, again, I'd want to take a look at the call specifically, but what often happens, and we'll get into this, is that they lean in and then we describe a product that is just so nonsensical to them that they lean out. And that's an execution problem. That's not a demand problem. It's like, it's like, I'm trying to do this, and then you're explaining to me how like the physics of Mars works. And I'm like, I don't need that. I'm trying to solve something here. And so like, of course, but we're looking for evidence of force. And that's what demand is. It's not like them just complaining, right? Bitchin' ain't switching, classic Bob Moesta quote. Um, it's not them saying, "Oh wow, this product is really interesting. Congratulations on building it," right? Like that is enthusiasm. That is not demand, right? There's a difference. Oh, cool. I love this is exactly where the industry is headed, is not saying, I am trying to accomplish this. I'm trying to get this off my plate. I'm trying to do this thing, right?
Yeah.
And the difference there is everything.
Yeah. Thinking about, some of the chats that you've had with other founders. I can't, like, I don't know, probably a dozen instances come to mind where a founder's written to you on Slack and be like, this is what's going on. Like they're kind of frustrated, and you watch 3 of their sales videos and you're like, oh, demand is very obvious. Like it is like the demand is there. It's like maybe the supply doesn't match it, or maybe the way they're communicating, or they're going too fast in the demo, whatever. There's all these other things that are going on, but the demand is actually, if you take a step back and stop thinking, do people want my product, and instead think, what are they trying to pull? It's actually very present there.
Yeah, are they applying force, right? Is like the main question. And it might not look like what you expected. Like I was watching one recently, and gonna try to like generalize this. The potential customer was like she was basically like, hey, I am looking to apply AI in my like job, so that when I'm doing interviews, because I don't think this company is doing super well, that when I'm doing interviews in a couple of years from now or a couple months from now, I don't look like a dinosaur, right? And the founder was like coming at it from like a much more functional perspective of like, well, you don't have XYZ, like your project isn't this. But like that demand that she had was super intense. And so it's like this kind of like existential, like I am trying to demonstrate that I like am worthy of my next job, right? Which you can then harness in that case. And so that's like an example here of somebody is applying some sort of force against their status quo. That might not be super repeatable, that might like whatever, but in that specific call, there was a path to be taken and the founder just didn't see it.
Let's pause on that. And I'm going a little out of order here, but I think that's really important, and I don't want to forget it later
Yeah.
on in this conversation. Okay, so let's say that happens. Like you're a founder, you're in a call, or you're doing sales, you're in a call, and you observe that kind of a response, which does not meet like that would have you call this off-roading, I guess sometimes. Like what would you say to that founder, or to a founder in a similar situation that's like, oh, demand just appeared, your supply doesn't match it. Like what do you, or you haven't heard it before, maybe it's new, like how should they react to that?
Yeah, I think in that moment you just be curious, right? It's like, oh, so I'm hearing that blah 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 blah, right? Like I'm hearing that you're trying to kind of like demonstrate that for this next job, that AI da 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 da. Like, tell me, how are you thinking about that? And basically in your mind, you're just filling out the pull framework there. And then you say, okay, cool. So given this, it seems like you're trying to accomplish this. You don't have very good options. And so you're looking for something that would help you do this without this, right? And all of that is you kind of like scoping out their world. And then it's like, okay, given that, here's what we do. Does this kind of fit what you're looking for? Right. And you can see that. But what we tend to do in that situation is when it's, well, one, we don't know to actually fill out the pull framework. Like that is the point of discovery. Discovery is just filling out the pull framework and then describing our product in a way that fits. That's, and then demoing like whatever fits that. But um but yeah, like in that moment, what usually happens is we hear that, we're like, that's not what I was expecting to hear, so let me just like move on to what I want to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're on train tracks a little bit with your like my deck is structured in a certain way, and so we are going to walk through it in that way rather than they've actually invited you into something. But there's another maybe this relates to what you've written about people have a single priority. Like, what would you say? Like, oh, actually, like maybe they would still be interested in your products, but this is this other pull. Like, can people have multiple things that they are like fighting against the status quo on, or is it more limited than that?
Yeah, they can only prioritize one thing at a time. But right, like at any one point in time, different priorities are competing in their heads for kind of like what am I going to actually put effort against right now. And so, yeah, I'm working on something on this concept, which is just like, we just need better ways to understand what buyers are trying to do in their lives and how different, and like how we can position in ways where like they're going to buy 100% of the time versus 10% of the people buying 10% of the time. That is a thing I've been like working on with a couple startups, and we'll report back on that. But stay tuned there.
Yeah. Maybe one more actually this is in the evidence of a bad evidence of demand. You talk about like where the industry is headed, the complaining. The third one that you had there jumped out to me. Like I do a lot of work with universities and with professional associations, zoos, aquariums, like family entertainment kind of stuff or wildlife conservation. They often talk about like a mission document or like here's the like 5-year plan that's been outlined by by the new president or CEO. I think I paid way too much attention to that for a long time. It was like these are the company priorities. That's different from the individual priorities that the person's working on. And so I don't know. How do you see that for a lot of folks aren't selling to the types of organizations I am. How does that appear when people are talking about like company priorities and in B2B?
Yeah. Oh no, it's like super common. Where the way to think about this is that if it's not on an individual person's to-do list, it's just not going to happen. And so what you'll hear is, "Oh yeah, we've talked about this a lot at the executive team level, right? It is a stated problem for the company." When you hear those words, that means nothing's happening. It's not on somebody's to-do list until you like double click and say, okay, like who's actually owning this? What are they trying? Is that you? If not you, cool. Can you put me in touch with them? Right? Because it's if it's not my project on my to-do list, then I don't have demand. Only the person with the project on their to-do list has demand. And then when they have demand and you fit their demand, then your job is to help them sell that internally.
Mm, mm. Um, I'll be thinking about that this week and going forward while I'm talking to some organizations. I'm going to pull up your blog this week. Let's talk about you have two buckets here. For anybody that's just listening, we'll put the link to Rob's latest newsletter in the show notes. Recommend pulling it up. He's got two buckets. I'm just going to read through these real quick. The left hand side is the demand problem, or like you have a demand problem. If you're struggling with sales and you've got a demand problem, the two possibilities are there's no demand here, or the second one that Rob calls out is there's lukewarm demand or demand but not pull. You're not seeing that force. On the right hand side, you've got execution problems. Then we'll pause and talk about the difference between these. And it's we're not talking to enough potential customers. Pipeline. We didn't hear their demand. We pitched something totally irrelevant to their demand. Something in our sales process caused them to lose faith that we could fit their demand, or we're not selling to people who look like our best fit customers. Maybe before we'll walk through like these 7 different parts of the diagnostic. But first, demand problem versus execution problem. Like Rob, what's going on here?
Yeah. So often when I'm watching a founder's sales calls, the founder comes to me because they're like, listen, we haven't found demand, and we're like, demand is super weak. And then you listen to the calls and you're like, this is not a demand problem. And what a demand problem is basically a customer is not exerting force against their status quo. they are not trying to accomplish something in particular, right? Or their existing options are good enough. That's what demand but not pull is, right? Like they're trying to accomplish something and they can do it in a spreadsheet. Their existing options are good enough, right? And so those are demand problems, but most of the time it is an execution problem, which is like we didn't hear them when they articulated what their demand was, or we just kind of like went into a 37-minute demo of totally unrelated things that caused them to just say, I have no idea what this person is talking about, right? Or right, like we lost them in the sales process or something like that. So I'd split them into two categories because demand problems are ones where you do have to go back to the drawing board and like really revisit your pull hypothesis. Who are we targeting? Who do we believe actually has demand? And what do we believe it is? Execution problems are like, how do we stop getting in our own way? And those problems are like they're a lot more fun to deal with because there's like you can visualize it in your mind as customer is trying to make progress and they're blocked, and then we show up and just block them more with our approach to sales. And so it's just like how do we unblock ourselves there?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I'm hearing from you on this is actually you've said something interesting, which is like most of the time that it's an execution problem. Is that because why is that the case? Like why do you find that that's the challenge more frequently?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've just never been taught how to listen to sales calls or what we are looking for in sales calls. And so what usually happens is the potential customer, this is, I don't know, like 5 out of 10 cases, I would say. I watch a sales call and the potential customer in like a 3-minute introduction to why they're taking the sales call explains pretty clearly why, like what their demand is. And also explains a bunch of pain points, a bunch of like what they believe to be relevant context, talks about some solutions and so there's like a jumble of things in there that I just was never taught to like actually unpack that and say, okay, what in here is demand or what is complaining, like what's happening in this? And so we
Mm,
get this information. We're usually like, okay, that's gross. Let me ask the questions on my list. And we just totally miss it. And so we go spear fishing after that for things that are totally irrelevant. We learn useless things. The customer's confused at this point. They're like, I'm getting questions, like, I don't know what these questions are, but I suppose I will answer them. And so the call just becomes like mouth movements on both sides, where we're just kind of like talking past each other and saying words because words are nice to say. And otherwise it would be awkward. And so that's usually what is happening. And so once you actually look at it, like learn how to look at a sales call and extract demand out of it. And then you learn how to like ask the question, okay, given demand, what should we pitch on the supply side? That solves a lot of this, like a
mm,
lot of this. There are some times when there just isn't demand, right? And that's a big problem. But like a lot of the time, it is just, we're not listening.
yeah. Yeah. And the solutions are very accessible on the execution side. Much much less traumatic for for you as the founder or the founding team. Um, Rob, are there things that, the first two on the demand side, there's no demand here. There's lukewarm demand, but no pull. Maybe I think we've probably hit that first one. It's like there's no force. They're not trying to solve it.
Yeah, there's no force. We're not trying to solve it. They're not trying to solve anything. They're just talking, right? Or they might be complaining, but they're not. And so what you do in that case is you want to go take a good hard look at your pull hypothesis, or and unlike who you're targeting with it, or you want to say, okay, cool. I'm seeing this in these calls, but these people bought fast and are happy. So like, I need to deeply understand the difference here because I need to why did those people buy and these people don't seem to have demand at all, that the contrast between those two is usually where you figure out what demand really is.
Mm. And is that the same solution for what you say in the second part? There's lukewarm demand but no pull. Is that just a different, is that like a gradation of the first one?
Yeah, it's the most dangerous one because you hear that oh yeah, we're considering prioritizing this. Tell me more, right? And that feels like leaning in, but it really is lukewarm. Or it's like, yeah, we're definitely prioritizing this, but a spreadsheet's probably good. Like, but we're probably gonna build this in a spreadsheet, right? Where it's either the force isn't very strong against the status quo, or the force against the status quo is strong, but the force against their existing options is not strong. In those cases, what happens is you just kind of in this limbo state where it's like I wrote it, I think, as you basically have enough positive signal to be optimistic, but not enough to survive, right? And that's a bad state to be in because you
Yeah.
intuitively like, maybe if I just do a couple more calls here,
Yeah.
maybe if I just spend another couple months, it'll fall. And usually it's like, no, you have to go back to your pull hypothesis, tear it down to the shreds, and like go attack in a slightly different angle.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Um, that one's speaking right at my soul right now.
Well, let's
Let's
talk about your situation though, where like this week you sent me a message. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. You sent me a message where you were talking to a aquarium museum, something
It
like
was
that.
a university. Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Um,
Yeah, in South America. And so as a media product, I don't we have a media product, we have audiences that are spread all over the world. The challenge that I ran into previously, which was like as a marketing vehicle for local institutions, it's very hard. Is this the one you're
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about,
yeah,
Rob?
yeah.
So as a marketing vehicle for place-based experiences and institutions, our value proposition is like too diffuse, and I ran into that for a very long time, like frustratingly. Um, However, talking with this university, it's University of Chile. Uh, they brought up, we were talking to him, and he asked us about our audience, and I thought he wanted to hear like we have a huge Chilean audience, which we have a Chilean audience that's like fine. It's about what you would expect given the global population of Spanish speakers and how many of them are in Chile. And but when I said like most of 90x% are outside of Chile, he was like, "Oh, that's great. Like what we're trying to do is like really grow our international across Latin America, across the United States, Spain, other parts of Europe." That's actually where we do have a much stronger value proposition is like reaching beyond, or there's maybe a couple other things that we can do locally, but really it's less strong than just like we have this huge audience that's dispersed. um, and so my reflection to you was like, okay, now there was an interesting, surprising thing that happened in that conversation. And so it was time to go back to like the pull framework and say like, okay, what are the organizations that I expect, or who are the human beings that I expect are focused on are having a hard time establishing a very broad, brand recognition or something like that. And I think travel agencies is like one of them, like that are focused on bringing people to a location. It's like they don't actually want to reach people that are already there. They want to reach people that are outside. There's probably a couple other ones, but like the new sprint will be focused on that type of organization.
Yeah, so like let me put that in my words of like how I understood this, which was basically you were having you've had a series of frustrating sales conversations with like, well, I'll just say like museums and whatever. And um those conversations have all had the character of like, cool, we're trying to reach our local audience. You offer like some awesome media products, tell us more about that. And then they learn that you have this kind of very broad audience, and they're like, oh, we're actually just looking for people who are right, like
Right here.
nearby.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. And so you're expecting that to happen. And then something surprising happens. Like, oh, amazing. That's great. Like,
Yeah.
we want a much broader audience. And so in your mind, your like pull hypothesis kind of like shifts, right? It goes from like find an audience nearby to like attract a global audience. of XYZ kind of people, da, 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 like all
Yeah.
the additional details there. And then it's like, okay, if that's what this person is trying to do, who is actually trying to do this all the time? It's like, oh, well, tourism bureaus, like these
Hmm.
kinds of places are ones that have that shape of demand, and it's like way less random
Yeah.
than one kind of like university's XYZ person having that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The other place I've like taking that into other conversations, like there's certain government agencies that we've produced with that are like focused on international reputation. Like there's other types of organizations that it's like the thing that I was previously thinking about as a major weakness that I had to overcome was actually turning into something that was like, oh, interesting. Like that is something that XYZ person or me and or them saying me um have been actively trying to solve, and we haven't cracked that yet. So um I don't know if there's anything else to add on that. We can
No, I
we
mean,
can
I
probably
think
just
that's like a common thing. That's why you do these demand audits and look for things that are surprising. Like that's surprising applications of force, or like that's
yeah.
essentially an example of it. We had a kind of like similar thing where I was apologizing for we didn't have our customers from 0 to 1 million ARR could not log into a software platform, and we were selling software, which, well, you kind of apologize for that. Like, I promise it's right around the corner. We're like working on it. And one customer was like, listen, I don't want to learn a new tool. That's not something I care about. And so then we sold it as like, and we'd say like, and one of the best parts is you don't even have to learn a new software tool. Everyone was like, cool, amazing, awesome, right? And then it just like didn't like, yeah. So there's just like a lot of ways in which either like demand is surprising or the way in which we're getting in our own way is surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Why don't we, Rob, hit some of these other execution problems?
Yeah.
Um, one is we're not talking to enough potential customers. We could probably link to some of the pipeline stuff. Like it's like you haven't earned your demand problem if you're not having the sales conversations yet. Um, I feel like this is one we've hit a couple times from a couple different directions. There was a demand signal. I just didn't catch it or double click into it. What you said about basically having the mental model of the pull framework, which we can link to as well. And just like thinking about, okay, just heard demand. Let's run through this pull framework to actually understand it. Anything else you'd say on that one, Rob?
Yeah, no, this one's just like wildly. This and the next one are insanely common.
Yeah, let's talk about that next one. Their demand was pretty clear, but I'm not pitching anything that fits their demand.
Yeah, so what will happen is maybe you get lucky and they show up and they're like, all right, I don't want you to ask me any questions. I want to explain to you exactly what my pull framework is. That's ideal. I love when that happens. And it's like, cool, okay, I get entirely what your demand is. And then for some reason, we feel like we need to pitch them on the entirety of the theoretical history of software applications and why cloud beats da da da, like, and just like a bunch of random stuff
Yeah,
that you what you'll find is that a pitch, you'll describe your product for like 4 minutes and you've lost them at minute like 1/2, right? They just like totally don't get it. They've zoned out. They're checking Slack, whatever, right? And
yeah,
and and the same thing happens in a demo, where whenever you pull up a demo and you're like, all right, now this is the home screen. This is where you log in, and let me jump into the settings page so you get how all the permissions work, right? Like they are already just like looking for a door to just hit their head against or something like, and so what usually happens there is like we think that we need to describe this as a very big thing to wow
mm,
them and convince them to buy it, when we actually have to describe it as and demo it as the smallest thing that fits their pull possible with the least number of concepts they need to understand, the least number of screens they need to see. It's just like, yeah, I can see how this fits my pull. Awesome. I want it. Let's move on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I forget exactly what episode that was. We talked about it, but about the consequence of understanding pool being your product gets smaller, and the way you describe your product gets smaller and more focused, specifically around the specific task that they are, or the specific project that they are trying to solve. Um, let's hit number 6 real quick. There was a demand supply fit, and then there wasn't. And this can there's a couple things that you describe with this. One is a great first call that like sort of peters out, or you get actually pretty far. You give an interesting example here where they one of your the founders that you're working with, they were getting pretty far into the sales process, and then the CFO was just like, or different CFOs were just consistently destroying it. And you said, what your analysis of this is it's not a demand problem. It's a we need to help our champion not get wrecked by their CFO problem. What would you say about like that kind of situation?
Yeah. So what will happen is you'll have like a good call one, or you'll have a good like demand protocol one. They'll be like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we need, right? And it's like, cool. At that point, like they want it. We need to help them buy it. And something in that process of like help them buy it causes them to drop off. Whether it is we answer some question in a way that they're like, wait a second, I don't know if these people are actually real. Or it's like they go running face first into their own company's internal processes. Like, and another example here is you get brought in for a group demo, your champion is super enthusiastic, and then you just bungle the group demo so poorly that the champion needs to go into hiding for a few months, and then like just to keep their job. Like these things are like quite
Yeah,
common. And
yeah,
so it's okay, we found demand fit, we found supply fit. Everything after that is like not really sales, it's project management. And we just mess up something in the project management stage. And so the thing is just, okay, figure out what we messed up and never mess that up again. Like design around that being part of the sales process. So, example in the CFO case is, okay, instead of our champions just getting clotheslined by their CFOs every time they try to get the deal across the line, like let's give them a way to not have that happen.
yeah, yeah. What 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 were the steps that they took? How did they figure out how to how to effectively support the champion?
Yeah. So in like this case, it was just starting to provide something for the champion. Before there's like, cool, I'm going to go talk to my CFO. Should be good. Provide really nothing to them, and the champion just gets run over. And so it's like, okay,
Yeah,
let's go back to the champion, and let's maybe talk to a few CFOs at companies where they have bought it and figure out how they, like what did they need to see, and maybe it's a business case, maybe it's something else, TBD, but you
yeah,
just kind of figure out what's the shape of thing that fits what they need at that point.
yeah, yeah. And that has to do, or it's closely related to one of the other pieces of advice you've given in the past, which is like talk to customers that where it didn't work or that were a failure or something like that. Maybe they didn't buy or maybe they disappeared. Like do whatever you can to get on the phone with them to actually, and it's not trying to sell them again. It's like understanding what happened, like what was actually going on. I find that in those kinds of conversations, if I'm like, hey, can you just shoot me straight? Like, people aren't telling me the truth and I'm trying to understand it. People will often like open up and just try to help you out.
Yeah, 100%. And like sometimes you might even like need to go fly there, right? And meet, take them out for a beer or whatever in person. Like, but continuing to hit your head against this same wall repeatedly is insanity. And so it's like, cool, this is our bottleneck right now. I'm going to find the fastest way to attack this bottleneck, fix it, get to truth, and like move on. And assuming that if I fix this bottleneck and we have demand, we have supply fit, and we're just getting run over at this point, fixing this bottleneck
Yeah.
should like at least move the bottleneck downstream. Maybe it's onboarding, maybe it's right like retention, maybe it's something down there. But like we are no longer blocked at this part.
Yeah. The last one that you talk about is their demand doesn't look like our best fit customers' demand. And this is where you've talked a little bit about contrasting here, but some customers buy super fast and are satisfied. Some buy super slow and aren't very satisfied. It's unclear the two. What do you do if you're a founder that has that kind of bifurcation? How do you get over that?
Yeah, so this is the super common thing that I've seen kind of like post seed stage when we're trying to grow really fast. What you tend to find is that like there's almost a total bifurcation of like deals that close fast and like customers are happy, and deals that close slow or customers aren't happy. And understanding the difference will tell you what to do. So like an example is you have like 2-week sales cycles and you have 12-month sales cycles. And sometimes you can get those 12-month sales cycles to buy in 6 months, but then they churn, right? And it's like, okay, what the heck is going on here? What you'll usually find is that like the 2-week sales cycle is like, or actually the 12-month sales cycle is actually like 11 months of waiting, plus then something happens in their world that causes a 2-week sales cycle. And it's
That's
like, okay,
interesting.
like that's the thing here. And so based on that, we actually need to like rethink how we approach pipeline so that we're not wasting 11 months following up with people who don't have demand.
Yeah. Eh,
Or you'll find that like, okay, what we've been doing at that moment, like when we have one of those long sales cycles, is we're just throwing a bunch of like urgency things and offers to these people
Yeah.
before they have pull. And so if they buy for the wrong reason and then aren't satisfied, they don't implement, they don't really exert effort. And our entire company is just like over rotated on making those people who aren't going to be satisfied, like trying to shoehorn the product into their workplace. And so and then I'll explain the other example of like, oh, wait, there's just two different kinds of people here.
Yeah. Actually, I thought we were going to start there, which
Yeah.
was, but I think this is very interesting. It's more about the when, like a little bit about the why. Like, that, would
Yeah.
you say that, like throwing in a big discount is, um, sometimes it feels like you need to do that in order to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
early customers. When is that the right strategy and when is that the wrong strategy?
Yeah. So, like, what I've seen is that basically, if there isn't demand there, if they're not actively prioritizing something, then you're going to interpret that as an urgency problem. Like that's what we do by default. And so, oh, how do we create urgency? And
Yeah.
you're going to devise a set of tactics to create urgency, which include discounts, which include whatever, right? Like uh,
Yeah.
a bunch of questions to amplify the pain. You're going to use challenger sales to twist their arms, right? And like my sense after looking at like that can close deals, but we care about retention in the product market fit game. And what often happens is the us imposing urgency on customers leads to them not necessarily making the best long-term decision in their minds. And so they don't exert effort to implement and like get it right. They just buy because it's cheap now or because whatever, right? And so what you're seeing there is there isn't strong demand. And if we had just waited a couple months, there would have been strong demand
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they would have implemented successfully. But instead, we're just kind of like we're throwing CSMs at these people. We're like trying to just make it work when they're basically we are substituting the lack of force from their side with a ton of force from our side. And it is just this is a very common thing. It's just a design thing that you have to design away from, and you really just want like you can add urgency when they have demand. You give them a reason to buy sooner versus waiting.
Hmm.
Totally reasonable. But when they don't, trying to add urgency usually just leads to like customer success problems.
Hmm. Interesting. Let me try to repeat that back at you. What I'm hearing from you is, creating urgency, helping to like get it over the line. Like that's legit. However, if that's a requirement to get all of your sales going, if it's like if you have to do it, apply it to like such an extreme level, or if it feels like it's not, I don't know. Like I think I'm still wrestling a little bit with how do I know if there's really demand there if I'm having to subsidize it? Is it the extent of the subsidy, or like what do I do with that?
Yeah, so like they demand is pretty binary. Like, it's, are they trying to exert force or not? If they are trying to exert force against their status quo and we're just giving them a reason to exert that force sooner, great. That's fine. Like, an example is one of my friends' startups went from 500K to 50 million ARR in a couple years, and they had a one-time onboarding fee of like 10,000 or 50,000 or whatever it was, and they never charged a customer that. It was literally just used as a reason for customers to buy this month versus next month. Because if you buy this month or buy whatever date, like, we're going to waive the onboarding fee, right? That as a tactic is fine, assuming that customers are actually trying to accomplish something, assuming that they're applying force. And this is giving them a reason to go to their CFO, for example, and say, hey, listen, we should do it this month because we'll save 10K. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a like
Oh, interesting. Okay.
applying urgency
Yeah.
when there is demand, just kind of like like puts uh, uh it is a tactic to help them make a decision faster, versus applying urgency when there isn't demand is trying to create like false scarcity so they make a bad decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when in this case, like with the discount, what's helpful there is it's an execution problem that you are actually designing to help ease the purchase rather than creating demand that, trying
Yes.
to create demand through a pricing strategy. That's super interesting. Uh, okay, and then we were gonna hit the person that you're reaching out to. So we talked a little bit about the when, and a little some of the why. Talk a little bit more about when it's maybe it's the wrong person that you're reaching out to, or the wrong role or something like that.
Yeah, so the last thing that you might find when you're in this stage where it's like some people are buying fast and some people aren't, is that you actually, when you compare them, you're like, oh, there's actually something that's meaningfully different about them. It's not just the same person at two different points in time. And so this is actually how, like, you get kind of market segmentation, and this is almost like a bottoms up, like, or emergent market segmentation, when you realize that, oh wait, like, we just shouldn't serve these people who suck, right? Or whatever. They're like not a good fit for us for whatever reason. And so it could be, right, like, it could just be, oh, wow, it turns out that really small customers aren't a good fit for us. Or it
Yeah,
turns out that former lawyers as CEOs just not a good, like, it's just random. It could be random, or it could be kind of like, it's often something that just like makes a ton of sense after the fact, but you couldn't have predicted it in advance. And it's just like looking at these people and you're like, they look the same to me. What is actually different about them? And you figure out what it is.
yeah. I like that. Let's use that to get into the demand audit itself. I'm gonna pull up uh just like a little diagram that you have basically, and these are maybe one thing to mention. You've got a Miro that you've just open source. Highly recommend people like get in there. It's got way more than the audit. It's a broader compilation of your kind of overall theory on how startups work, on how founder-led sales work. What I'm pulling up here is an example of a post-sprint demand audit that you ran with your company. Tell us how you like what were you trying to do here, and what are the elements of this? Like, how were you running your demand audit?
Yeah, this part isn't public because it actually is linked to actual call recordings with people, and
Okay,
so
okay, not
so
this one.
but but yeah, like, this is something I share with startups that I work with, just so they can see me going through these calls, and see that you do not actually have to be good at them. You just have to kind of like know what you're looking for. Um, and so yeah, so what this was is I had a hypothesis that we were going to have a certain kind of customer. And that customer was going to be a certain kind of engineer who had a certain kind of skill set at a certain stage of company. And so I was like, cool, I'm just going to schedule a bunch of sales calls with those people. And so I did. And I assessed, kind of like I put the recordings here, I linked the timestamps, and I linked quotes in there of them. And I was basically assessing a couple things. One, is there demand here at all? And if so, what is it? And then like, does that fit what I had expected? Then, if there is demand, does our supply fit their demand? Why or why not? What were they expecting? And then like, third thing, which is the most important, is did they poll for next steps? Right? That, we can hear a lot of things in sales calls. What really matters is what do they do when the strike like comes? And like, and that
Uh,
can be kind of like, that's, I don't know, can be binary, right? Do they request access? Do they actually sign up? Do they pay? Right? Versus do they just kind of like say, cool, well, love to keep in touch. And
yeah.
in doing this and comparing across these, I was able to more clearly figure out who exactly our target customers and what exactly we're pitching them.
Yeah, yeah. And I find it helpful. And specific example isn't in the Miro, but you do have the template
Yeah.
that's open source that people can be filling out,
Yes.
themselves to and what you end up doing is like like the colors are helpful. Like it sounds I don't know, I feel sort of stupid saying that, but like you go left to right and you're like, wow, like there's a lot of green on, person A, and person C there was something, and then it just naturally begs or it surfaces these questions around the differences. And I think sometimes they're not super complicated to answer, but until you look at them side by side, you just don't.
Yeah, there's something in this of, right, I remember like coming out of college, reading a bunch of business books and being like, this all seems like blindingly obvious. Like, why is this written in books? And it turns out that like most of this stuff is pretty straightforward. It's like, look at reality with a kind of somewhat of a framework here. Demand supplies is kind of like my suggested one. Look at reality and see, I don't know, see what comes out of it. And like, yeah, color code. Is this what I expected? Is this good or is this bad? And
Yeah.
compare and contrast. And you know, we 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 went through the most expensive MBA program ever for me to just say, is it green, yellow, or red on demand?
Yeah.
Gosh.
I've yeah, I can't recommend enough. Like I'm running a sprint right now targeted at a new pull hypothesis and a new pull framework. I find it's super helpful, and highly recommend people give it a shot. Rob, anything else you wanna add before? Uh, yeah,
No,
no,
I think you did good for a last minute curveball in this one.
yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully it was not dramatically more painful than the standard that we've set for this.
Yeah, well,
Um,
it's funny. I saw someone post about this on LinkedIn like recently, and it's like, wait, I forgot we posted these. So it's good to get some feedback that people are listening.
And Rob, as a reminder to anybody that accidentally made it this far, Rob, we'll read the comments. We do, if there's questions that you have that come up from this, drop them in there. If there's things that you want Rob to write about, drop it. Drop it in a comment on YouTube or on Spotify or on the newsletter itself. Rob also has a boot camp coming up in November. If you want to run like this type of sprint with a broader group of founders, starts early November. There's a couple weeks left. The link to information we'll put in the description. Anything you want to add on that, Rob?
I think like the most important thing is kind of what we keep coming back to is like, especially in today's, is it is, if you watch your own sales calls, the answers are generally in there, but like you often need a kickstart. Like you need to watch somebody dissecting a sales call so you can look at your own, right? And sometimes you need like just another founder to look at your sales calls. And so that's kind of what I've found to be most effective, is just seeing sales call and starting to be able to assess what is going on in these, what should we be pitching given this, and getting the clutter out of our minds there too about like pain points and stuff like that. It's just like super helpful. And so yeah, this is the thing I wish they had taught us in school, and turns out we got to do it ourselves. So,
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, listener, for making it this far. If you're still there, and we'll catch y'all or you next week.